was getting set for a big playoff game on Saturday night at the University of Phoenix Stadium that looked all great and gussied up for the national championship game that went down this week between Alabama and Clemson. He is the coach of the Arizona Cardinals, Bruce Arians. How are you, Coach?
Doing great, Rich. How you doing, brother?
I am doing just fine and dandy. Did you happen to be in the building for that national championship game?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to go over and watch it, and what a great game.
That was incredible. That was incredible. And interestingly enough, there's Alabama sitting out there, and Nick Saban's now won another national championship. He's one behind Bear Bryant, who I know you have a history with from back in the day. And I'm wondering, how much of Bear Bryant is in you as a coach?
Oh, I think everybody that coach touched their life, he's in there somewhere, and there's a lot. I took a lot of things from him. I hope that I could incorporate in my coaching.
Yeah, I mean, is it any time you caught yourself go, wow, that came from Bear Bryant? Is that ever?
About every time I chew one of them out real good and go in the locker room and then put your arm around them.
Yeah. So the ending of the season, the Week 17 game, was such an outlier based on the rest of your year. How did you take that loss, and what did you do with it with your team, Coach?
Really, it was an easy thing to look at. And if you don't play with energy and purpose, then you're going to get beaten in National Football League. I don't care who you're playing, especially somebody like Seattle. And we did not have a purpose for being on the field, and it was obvious the way we were playing. And we had already had a plan to take some guys out in the second half, no matter the score. But it was not our best performance by any stretch of the imagination.
So did you just bury the film? Did you have them look at it, or you just say, like, that's just the way that one is, let's turn the page, move to the playoffs? How did you approach that?
You always look at it. Our players came in actually and looked at it on their own. I gave them the day off, and they all came in and looked at the film. So it was studied. What you put on tape, you always study what you put on tape.
Sure. So what about the last time you faced Green Bay, the team that you faced that day? That team didn't show up at Washington last week. It was a completely different Packers team, what we saw this past week. How do you put those two things together for your team?
Well, when they played us, they were missing some offensive linemen and Sam Shields on defense, and those injuries in the offensive line, I think, added up quickly. It was one of those games where it was a 10-point game, and all of a sudden there was a huge swing right before the half, and we came out the second half and scored again, so it was over pretty quick. But the ball bounces funny some weeks. They're a very good football team. We respect them. And expect to have their best effort when they come in here.
Yeah. So, what are the challenges in preparing for 12? Trying to keep Aaron Rodgers contained to the best of your ability.
Well, the biggest thing for us is shut down the running game and get them one-dimensional. And obviously, offensively, you can help by scoring and taking them out of the running game. And we feel very comfortable playing anybody that's one-dimensional.
Right. Do you know what you're going to tell your team already? Right now, as you and I are chatting on Saturday?
Tell them what time the game's scheduled and show up on time.
No, you know what I mean. When you close the doors, it's time to get the team gathered one last time before going out on the field. I mean, how do you approach that?
I'm not a rah-rah guy. It's everything's a matter of fact. We'll talk a little bit Saturday morning, not much Saturday night, and before the game is go out and play your best 30 minutes and come back in at halftime and see what we got to do.
David Johnson, what he has become is a revelation in many ways for a lot of people. What did you see in this young kid at the Combine almost a year ago, what you're seeing out on the field right now, Coach?
A big, active guy who had great hands. I mean, he had wide receiver skills in a 225-pound body. And then when you turn the tape on, he played to that size. We were looking for another running back receiver so that we wouldn't lose half our offense if we lost Andre Ellington. And he pleased us. I mean, he pulled his hamstring in training camp, and then we signed Chris Johnson, who had a great year. And it was great seeing Chris out on the practice field today. But the sky's the limit for him.
Now, the name I've heard that has been bandied about by you is Franco Harris. Is that what you think this kid?
Yeah, Tom Moore was the first one to say, he really reminded him of Franco, and I see exactly what he's talking about. the feet, the speed, the size, the hands. I mean, which is great comparisons.
Bruce Arians, head coach, Arizona Cardinals, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'm wondering what you could add to the conversation that we are all having in the national media based on that Saturday night game involving the Steelers and the Bengals and the chippiness and the anger that seemed to be going back and level of disrespect, quite frankly, between players in the National Football League, and how coaches need to do a better job of handling players in that regard. What do you think your role as a head coach in the NFL is when the tempers flare and the games get that much more important about that subject?
The big thing is make sure you don't make mistakes that hurt your team. Don't be selfish, and you can't lose your cool. That's going to affect the outcome of the ball game. And I think a lot of it's the way you practice, the way you set the culture in your locker room. But that rivalry's been chippy for a long time. Yeah. It just happened.
No, I know, and you've been there. You were part of that rivalry for a long time. Do you think players in this league suddenly there's been an erosion of respect amongst professionals in this league at all, Coach?
No, I don't think so. I think it's always been there. Just there's a hell of a lot more eyes and ears watching it. You know. Probably Joe Green and Munoz and all those guys have been playing each other. There was a lot of it going on back then. Rivalries are kind of that way. But, again, you can't lose sight of the focus of the game and winning the game, even though if you don't like each other.
No, I know. We saw a rivalry game for you week 17. I didn't see a lot of that stuff going on between you and the Seahawks, even when the game was maybe even getting out of control against you. I didn't see any of that on the field that day.
No, it's just not the way we are. That's not the way we're built.
Mm-hmm. And do you have to say anything to Carson at all? Because he understands what's at stake. He understands about closing windows of opportunity as well in this league, and what's here. He's got this thing right in front of him after what we saw he and your team went through with the injury bug last year. Is there anything that you say to Carson Palmer at this time, Coach?
I just don't over-prepare. You know, he's a workaholic, and stay with your preparation. That's been pretty good. You could do a little extra, but don't overanalyze and end up with paralysis from analysis. Just play and just keep doing what you've been doing.
Yeah, and you've been around this for quite some time, and you've been with the Super Bowl winners. How does this team compare to those that you've seen win it all, Coach?
I think we have a chance when we show up and we play 60 minutes of our best stuff. We can play with anybody. And
you look around the room, and there's so many guys who have been there through it too, right? You got Freeney on one side of the ball. You've got Larry Fitzgerald on another one. I mean, and then all the guys that you have on the sidelines. The amount of experience. I don't mean to put it out there.
I don't think this team's going to get uptight. And, we've got a lot of young players who are involved, but the older players are taking them under their wings and making sure they're ready.
Okay. All right, Coach. Well, look, I appreciate you taking the time and spending some time before such a big game, and we've interviewed a bunch of your players this year. I've really enjoyed chatting with them. Tyrann Mathieu, too, who I know obviously is not with you on the field, but he's as active as they come, correct?
Oh, there's no doubt. Yes, indeed.
Okay. Coach, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rich.
You bet.
You bet, buddy.
You bet. That's Bruce Arians.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.